Thank you very much, Khaki Tours, and for giving me the opportunity of doing this long distance chat. And while we were discussing this, I had one of the things that came up was that I would like to talk about the origin of food, what we eat, etc. How it is panning out is a little different, but the basic idea remains the same. I would like to begin with going into a North Indian restaurant and picking up the menu. I'm not talking of a really five-star kind of a thing. I'm not talking of a roadside dhaba. I'm talking of a middle class kind of a eating joint where friends can go, you can go with family, etc. Now, if you go there and you pick up the menu, invariably the menu is broken up into major categories. And the categories run something like this. There is one section which says Indian. Following the section that says Indian is a section called South Indian. Then there is a section called Mughlai. And then there is a section called Chinese. Now, looking at the menu in the Indian is what got me thinking. And this talk that I'm doing today is a spin-off from looking at these menus and trying to decipher them. So one of the things was that I found that in the section which says Indian, there is no fish, there is no mutton, there is no chicken, there is no meat. And once I asked the manager of the restaurant that we had gone to eat, what do you mean Indian? So he said vegetarian. I said, but a whole lot of Indians eat meat. He said, no, but basically we are a vegetarian people. And therefore, the Indian section is about vegetarian dishes. Now, that is where my question begins. Are Indians vegetarians? Let us look at who the Indians are. All the tribals, all the tribes people, all the Dalits, all the Muslims, all the Sikhs. I'm not talking of exceptions. I'm talking of the overwhelming majority of the tribals, of the Dalits, the Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Parsis, Buddhists. These are all of them. They are all Indians. And all of them are non-vegetarians. But our story doesn't end there. Begin from the Gujarat coast and travel down on the west coast. Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, swing northeast up, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, move up, Odisha, Bengal. Then Bangladesh, and then you get Tripura and all that. This entire coast, the entire population that lives on the coast, what is the staple of their food? Obviously rice, but what do they eat their rice with? With produce from the seas, from the ocean, fish, and all other creatures, marine creatures. begin shift and move from north to east.
I'm sorry to disturb you, Sohail. If you
Yeah.
can be a bit louder, some people are not able to hear.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So you'll have to be a bit louder. Thank you.
Okay.
So you
So
can nearer to the
now,
screen so that people can hear.
what should I do?
You can be slightly nearer to the screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was saying that if you move along the coast, the entire population who lives along the coast are primarily fishermen, people who do who catch fish, or who are in the business of making boats, repairing boats, etc., etc. They live off the ocean, and all of them are meat eaters. They eat fish, or they eat whatever other creatures, edible creature that they find in the ocean. Shift to the mountains. Kashmiris, all Kashmiris, and I'm not counting the Muslims. Kashmiri Brahmins, Kashmiri Pandits, all of them are meat eaters. In Himachal, a large number of Kashmiri Brahmins are meat eaters. So also the Dogras and the Jammu Brahmins. In Garhwal, in Kumaon, in Champawat, the Brahmins are all meat eaters. Overwhelming majority. Continue. Go into Bihar. In Bihar, the Maithil Brahmins are vegetarians. I'm just counting the Brahmins. The Maithil Brahmins are vegetarians. In Bengal, the Brahmins are meat eaters. Some of them don't eat meat, but most of them, and especially those who are worshippers of Kali, Durga, they are majorly into meat eating. In Assam, in Odisha, so we are back there. Now this is the Brahmins. Now you take other communities, the castes, whether of UP or of Assam or of Bengal or of Odisha or of Madhya Pradesh or of Rajasthan, the castes are meat eaters. The Thakurs, the Rajputs, the Kshatriyas, they are all meat eaters. Who does that leave with? Who does that leave us with? If you add all of this together, an overwhelming majority of the population of this country are meat eaters. I'll give you percentages. Tribals are close to 9%. Dalits are close to 17%. Muslims are 14%. Christians are 2.3%. Sikhs are 1.7%. Then there are Parsis, they are about 50,000. Buddhists who are 1%. All this comes to more than 40%. Add to that all the other communities that I have listed. The Rajputs, the upper caste, the Dwajas, the twice born, Brahmins in many states. In Maharashtra, the Saraswat Brahmins, and both the God Brahmins and the the Saraswats are broken up into two categories. There are the God Brahmins and the other Chitpur Brahmins. Both of them are meat eaters. Marathas are meat eaters. And you can go state by state, and you will find that a majority of the population of each state, a majority are people who are meat eaters. I have a little problem with this category of vegetarian and non-vegetarian. Vegetarian is all right. There are people who eat vegetables and they don't eat things which are not vegetables. But this category of non-vegetarian, what does it mean? Because those who are called non-vegetarians, they don't survive only on meats. They also eat pulses. They also eat grains. They also eat vegetables, they eat legumes and pulses and beans. So you have vegetarians and you have what you might call omnivores, people who eat everything. Now, like vegetarians, there are vegetarians who won't eat, say, brinjal, or who won't touch bitter gourd. So there are meat eaters who also have their little idiosyncrasies. One will not eat mutton, will not eat pork, another will not eat beef, whatever. But generally, they consume meat and they consume vegetables and legumes and so on. There is this problem with this category. Now, the other is, as I have tried to show you, that a majority of the people of this country are not pure vegetarians. But the menu in a whole lot of restaurants you get is, and the menu is called Indian, which would mean that all those who don't eat this stuff are not Indian. Now, there is an attempt being made to define what is Indian, and it is being defined through this. And if you go to the next section, you will understand what I'm saying. The next section is South Indian. Now, are South Indians not Indians? Is the food that is eaten in South India not Indian food? And what is South Indian food? Because what goes in the name of South Indian are only snacks. Dosa, idli, vada. This is not what people in South India eat. And in South India, there are 4 states. And each one of them has a totally developed, fully developed, independent cuisine. Their cooking styles, the ingredients they follow, the cooking oils they prefer, all of them differ. But we club all that together as South India. In Delhi, food from Maharashtra is only pav bhaji. If you ask somebody, do you have something from Maharashtrian food? Pav bhaji hai ji. So this is how you are creating these little watertight compartments, and everybody is supposed to conform. If you are Indian, this is what you eat. Well, that is the impression that is created. Now, let us look at this menu a little closely. If I'm sure some of you have been to the kind of restaurant that I'm talking about, I'll run you through the list of what is on offer in most of these restaurants. There is paneer pakoda, there is paneer tikka, there is shahi paneer, there is paneer bhujia, there is kadhai paneer, there is paneer pasanda, there is tawa paneer, there is paneer butter masala, there is chili paneer, there is paneer korma, there is paneer manchurian, there is paneer lababdar, there is paneer jal farasi, there is paneer vindaloo, and there is mushroom vindaloo. And there is zira aloo, dum aloo, matar mushroom, matar paneer mushroom. Do you know what is being sold to us as vegetarian food or Indian food? Except for matar, there is no vegetable. There isn't a single vegetable. In none of the dishes have any vegetables in it. Paneer, all forms. And paneer is incidentally not an Indian thing. It didn't exist in India before the Portuguese arrived. What I'm calling paneer is cottage cheese, also known as chana. We did not have China in India. And since I'm assuming that quite a large number of those who are listening to this talk are from Maharashtra, are from Bombay. You might have had occasion to go to Goa. Next time you go there, ask for go to a Goanese restaurant, ask for a cheese dish, and then you will know what good cheese is and what it should taste like. Unlike the hard kind of stuff that we get in Delhi. Cheese is very succulent, very juicy, and it is the Portuguese who introduced it to us. And people in Odisha and Bengal have been fighting each other, saying that the Rasgulla is their invention. And they have been consuming it for centuries. And people in Odisha have been saying that Rasgulla has been offered at the Puri Jagannath temple as prasad for centuries. But there was no China in India before the Portuguese came. And in these restaurants that are allegedly serving you Indian food, they are only serving you things made of paneer or chana. Or they are serving you a whole lot of dishes made with potato. Now, the potato also was brought to India by the Portuguese. It is not Indian. And everything that we do with potato, we could not do any of these before the Portuguese arrived in India with the potato. And people from Maharashtra would know that it was first introduced not too far away from Bombay city. It was first introduced on the west coast in the small trading post that the Portuguese had. Goa, Daman, Diu, and also a couple of places they had in Kerala, the trading posts they had in Kerala. The bhaji that we eat with the pav is potato and tomato. Both of them came from Portugal. And to add a kick to it, we add chilies to it. And the chilies also came from there. And there were no chilies in India before the Portuguese came. The hottest spice we had was black pepper. And actually, one of the reasons why we were colonized was because of black pepper. Because pepper was the hottest, sharpest spice that the world knew. And India had a monopoly on it, or a near monopoly. And it was the Arab traders who were trading in black pepper and in green cardamom from India, and they were selling it to Europe. And they will not tell anybody where they got it from. And that is why the search for this spice led to these great voyages of discovery, in which Columbus discovered America by mistake, and we suffer the consequences of Columbus's mistake till today. But it is Columbus is going there that led to the discovery for the old world of capsicum. And it is the capsicum, Shimla mirch, red pepper, black pepper, and all the entire range of chilies, some hot, some very hot, and some killers. All of them are from South America and Central America, Mexico, and near that area. And it is the Portuguese who brought them to India. It is probably the Coley fishermen who were first introduced to these, and they began using it in their curries, and it is through them that it was introduced to the Marathas, and it is through the Marathas that it reached North India in the 18th century, late 18th century or 19th century. Before that, there are no chilies in North India. There are no chilies anywhere in this country. So, which brings me to the third category in this menu, which is called the Mughlai. Now, what is this Mughlai? First of all, linguistically, it is a wrong term. Food, it is supposed to mean that food that the Mughals ate. It should be Mughaliya if you go by the rules of the language from which you get Mughal. So Mughal of the Mughals is Mughaliya. It is not Mughlai Empire. It is the Mughaliya Empire or the Mughaliya Sultanate or the the Mughaliya Sultanate, not Mughlai Sultanate. But anyway, quite aside from that, the issue is that in the menu, Mughaliya is kept as a category above the Chinese. There is Indian food, there is South Indian food, and then there is Mughlai and Chinese. Now, what is the idea being given? What is the suggestion being made in this? That this is not an Indian food. And obviously, it cannot be an Indian food because it is meat, and Indians don't eat meat. That the first menu tells you. The first part of the menu tells you that Indians don't eat meat. Now, the funny thing is that what is sold to us today as Mughlai food or Mughaliya food has two distinct characteristics. One, that it is very rich in spices. Two, and especially in chilies. And two, it is very rich in cooking oil. Both of these things were absent in the time of the Mughals. There were no cooking oils. There were cooking oils. There was coconut oil, of course, but the use of coconut oil as a medium for cooking has remained by and large restricted to Kerala. And they are now, because it is so expensive, that people are moving away to rapeseed oil and other vegetable oils. And it was certainly not used as a medium for cooking in North India. The other, which is most commonly used, is groundnut oil. There were no groundnut cultivated in India before 1870s. And one of the earliest places where cultivation began was Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Maharashtra. But 1870s, 1860s, around that time. And for it to have been cultivated on a large enough scale for it to become the most, among the most used cooking medium was much, much later, fairly recently. And it's only after the process of refining oil became easily available that the slightly unpleasant smell of groundnut was could be removed. The other cooking oils that they are, sunflower and all that, they are fairly recent, and also incidentally, they are all not of Indian origin. Groundnut is again from South America, as is sunflower. These were domesticated by the native populations of America much before Columbus reached there. And it is from there that it has come to us, as has the French bean, which had nothing to do with France. It is from America, South America. It was introduced to France by the Spanish, and probably through the Spanish it reached Africa, and through Africa it came to us. The vegetables that I would like to eat when I go into a restaurant that purportedly serves vegetarian food is the bitter gourd, is Loki or the sponge gourd, or Torai, or Tinda, or Brinjal. These are all Indian vegetables. Most of them we have been cultivating for thousands of years, but you do not find them in any restaurant. They are never served. We don't eat Indian vegetables. At least we don't pay good money to buy. What do we eat? Paneer, paneer, aloo, and mushrooms. And there were no mushrooms large enough cultivation before the 60s. This large scale cultivation of mushrooms began with the effort of the Indian Agricultural Research Institute in the 1960s. Before that, there were hardly any mushrooms, except in the hilly terrain and areas with heavy rainfall, where people knew after the monsoon, they knew what are edible mushrooms and they could pluck them and cook them, but you could not buy them in the market. This was all very new. The vegetables that we eat regularly now, French bean I've mentioned already. There is cauliflower. The cauliflower is not Indian. It's French. Cabbage came to us from the English. Pumpkin is South America. And see what pumpkin means. Before the pumpkin arrived in India, our tanpuras did not look like this. Our sitar did not look like this. These musical instruments, in the shape in which we see them today, are not more than 300-year old. So it is not only about food. This process of global give and take that has been going on for God alone knows how many centuries is enmeshed very deeply into our cultural practices. It is sugarcane that traveled from India all over the world, and bananas. The cultivation of banana was first recorded in India in the time of Alexander. One of his generals recorded it. A strange tree he described that has no wood, it is all leaves. And it has fruits growing in bunch, and they are seedless trees, fruit, and they are very sweet, and so on and so forth. And he says the tree is planted in rows upon rows, and that is why we get the name plantain. But the funny thing is, in Kerala, there is a huge, really huge fruit of the plantain tree. It's a red colored banana. Each one of them can weigh more than half a kg. It is steamed and eaten for breakfast. It is an acquired taste. But that banana is Mexican. Our banana has gone and through Caribbean and America and all that, and now you have banana republics there whose major item of export are plantain fruits, and they are plantains of Indian origin, but there are Mexican plantains and they have come back. And sugarcane went from here, and candy came back. And if there is time, I'll tell you about the story of the journey of sugarcane. We have another vegetable that is very common, and now it's available all through the year, is the lady's finger, or bhindi, or okra. It's come to us from Africa, and during the time when we were colonized. We have been told that we are a land of spices. This is a little exaggeration. The only two spices we have are green cardamoms and black pepper. All the other spices that we cultivate now have been imported from the spice island, from the islands near Indonesia, which includes cinnamon, and which includes the bay leaf, the curry, the tejpat, and yes, the big cardamom that grows in Sikkim and in the northeast, that also we have had. But most of the other spices that we use, turmeric obviously is Indian, so is ginger. But one little thing that is a very strong uh, agent of a flavor, both in sambar and in North Indian cooking of dal, is hing, asafoetida. I think that's how it is pronounced. I don't know what is the correct pronunciation, but I know it as hing. 80% of hing is imported. All of it comes from Afghanistan. It is the gum of a tree. Without that, our food will lose our sambar and our dals will lose their flavor. So there is this phenomenal variety of our food, and it has been centuries that it has been coming. For example, palak, spinach. Where does it come from? The cultivation of spinach has been traced in the 6th century of the Common Era, which would mean, say, about 1800 years ago from today in Iran. It arrived in India in the 7th century. And it is through India that it went via Nepal into China. And in China, even today, it is known as the Persian vegetable. But this is the route it took. It went through India via Nepal. So you know, I've told you about groundnut. I've told you about sunflower oil. The before groundnut arrived in the middle of the 18th and 19th century, what did Maharashtrians cook in? Or the Gujaratis? Or people in Madhya Pradesh? The most commonly used cooking oil was till oil. It's become very expensive now, but sesame oil was the medium of cooking. And there was, of course, mustard. But mustard was not used, when you're cooking, doing a choke kind of a thing, or you were doing just chopped greens. Then mustard was used, but for regular cooking, your sesame seed was the oil, which has been replaced totally by uh, groundnut oil. And so one can go on. This is an endless list. And this is and food is not only what you the vegetables and the pumpkins and so on and so forth. There is a lot of fruit. There is this one fruit which is known as sitaphal in Maharashtra, and there's another fruit which is known as sitaphal in UP. The sitaphal in UP is the pumpkin. You probably, when people in Maharashtra, people probably call it, I don't know what they call it. Is it called the kumra? I don't know. But what you call the sitaphal is actually the custard apple. So in central India and Maharashtra, the custard apple is the sitaphal. In UP, the pumpkin is the sitaphal. Now, I can assure you that Sita never ate either of these because both of them came from South America and they were brought to India by the Portuguese. They didn't exist in India in the time when Ram and Sita are believed to have existed. What is that time? I don't know. But it certainly wasn't 300 years ago. Now, so coming to the end of my presentation, there is one thing that I wanted to say, and that is that this entire idea of traditional food, traditional cuisine, recipes that have been handed down from generations, etc., etc. They are all basically myths. There is no traditional cuisine. Because if there was traditional cuisine, if there were recipes that had been handed down from generations and so on and so forth, you will not need chefs. There would be one recipe which had been put down in the time of, say, Maharaj Bharat, or in the time of Charak, or in the time of whoever. And though that recipe would constantly be reproduced. But in life and in culture, this does not happen. Culture is constantly reinventing itself. It is always throwing out dead stuff and incorporating new things. I have tried to show you how the very method of cooking has changed, the very medium has changed, our utensils have changed, all that has changed. So how can you have the same recipe? There were no chilies. There were no chilies 300 years ago. So what are we talking about? The civilization that is 5,000 years ago is presenting you with a food that couldn't have been cooked more than 300 years ago. And you call that traditional. So what we eat today, and it's not only in India, it's all over the world. What people eat, how they cook, and what they identify with as their national food. All these things have happened in the last couple of 100 years. So what is known as Indian food today is known as Indian food, I think, because of two things. One is this mixture of clashing flavors that we put together to create something new. And the other is this process of, I don't know if there is a word for it in English, they call it slow cooking, etc. I don't know what that is, but what we call bhunai. You slice onions, you heat cooking oil, and you put onions in it, and you roast them. And when they have turned brown, then you add spices to it, and then you roast it again. And then, if you're cooking vegetables, you put vegetables in it. If you're cooking meat, you could put meat in it, and you roast it again. And then you add curd, and you roast it again. This process in various variations. They don't do it like this in Kerala. They don't do it like this in Tamil Nadu. There is another process. In Maharashtra, you have the panchphoran, which goes into a seasoning of after the cooking has been after you have finished cooking. Or at times you do the panchphoran first and then you add the ingredients, So, but this is what gives it a unique character. Whatever comes from outside the borders of what is now South Asia or India, has to go through that, and therefore we have now an Indian Chinese, and I'm sure there is a Bombay Chinese and there is a Pune Chinese, just as in Delhi there is a Karol Bagh Chinese and there is a Paharganj Chinese. And there is also a Garhwal Chinese and Kumaon Chinese. And there is a Patna Chinese and a Ranchi Chinese. A Chinese, if he saw this food, he will not recognize it as his food. This is now become Indian food. Just as all these things that I have been listing arrived here and became part of Indian food. So that is how Swadeshi our food is. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, we can take them now.
Thank you, Sohail. This was a beautiful, beautiful presentation. And I'm sure a lot of people, so I always assumed that peanut and peanut oil, which is so ubiquitous everywhere, is something that is distinctly Indian. So this was a new information for me, which is there. I'll start by my question, then I'll take other questions which I have collated. My first question is, we have such diversity of chilies, right? I mean, Andhra is a chili capital, but Northeast, I think so, that Bhut Jolka, something that the spiciest chili comes from India.
Yeah.
So there are different kinds of chilies. If you go to the bazaars of Mumbai, you at least find some 50 odd chilies in different shops. So wanted to understand how come there's so much, if chili is not local, how come we have such diversity in the country?
Well, sorry, I should have mentioned that there is one family of of plants which has about 13,000 members. I forget the scientific name, but the chili and tobacco both come from the same family. And both tobacco was also incidentally introduced to India by the Portuguese. The chilies that came to India first, the Portuguese brought it, and they did not bring the plant as something that they were using in their food. They used to plant them on the hedges for the multicolored fruit. And what we get, the chili normally we get are red or orange and all that, but there are chilies that become white when they are fully ripe. There are chilies which are orange, which are crimson, which are mauve, which are spotted. There are thousands of varieties of chilies, and many of them came into India. Some that were not so intolerably hot as the Bhut Joloka, they came to be used in a more regular way, and some of these became rarities. One doesn't know how they reached Nagaland, but the Portuguese had a small presence in Bengal also for a while. One doesn't know how to, maybe there was somebody in a tea plantation who brought it. But chilies have absolutely no root in India. The funny thing is, brinjal, which comes from the same family, has its roots in India. Not in India, actually, Africa. And about 2 million years ago, there is a movement of the plant that are spreading on its own. Yeah. One stream moves eastwards and lands in South Asia, and it is from that several subspecies develop, and one of them evolves into the brinjal. It is the same family as the chili, and I made this connection in Arunachal, where they were selling a specific kind of a brinjal. It was reddish when it was fully ripe, and very very deformed. So I thought it was a chili, and I asked that woman who was selling them. I said, "What is this?" She said, "This is a brinjal." But she said, "Be careful. It is very hot. So if you touch it and then you rub your nose, you are going to have to uh, wash your face for hours. It is that hot." But it is a brinjal. So so these two are the range of chilies is phenomenal. If actually you just go to Google, write chilies and opt for images, and you will be dazzled absolutely. So it was the Portuguese planted them on their hedges as a decorative hedge for the colorful fruit. It is probably the Koli fishermen and their wives who were probably working in their houses who would have first tried them to taste. And then it is through them that it reaches the Marathas, and then through them it spreads all over.
So it's very interesting. We have a friend called Mr. Chandrasekhar Nene, who once said that in the Maratha documentation, when I think so, Nanasaheb Peshwa's son was getting married, there's a description of an exotic fruit which has come from Portugal, which is so spicy that you can only eat it if you add it to a curd. You can just eat it, which is chili.
Yes, which would be chili, yes.
And the logic given by him was it was like miri. Miri is black pepper. Mirchi, miri sarki in Marathi. Imitates mirchi, right? You mentioned about cooking oil not being used in Mughaliya food or whatever, which was a shocking thing, because I got private messages also which asking
they use ghee.
Okay.
No cooking oil, because I've been digging up recipes and all that, and in Ain Akbari there are recipes given. So he says so many, for cooking so much of rice, there is so much of ghee. There is no mention of any oil.
Right.
So they use cooking oil. They use Desi ghee and no cooking oil.
Okay. Speaking of Mughals, two of the dishes which people have asked questions on, I think so Farooq has asked a question, is biryani and tandoori. So another question is there on biryani about where did it come from? Did it come from Kerala into India, or did it come via Persia? One. And second question is tandoori. So was this bought by Mughals or earlier Muslim rulers? Because in India, all Muslim rulers are Mughals many a times. So does it predate the Mughals, or it is during the Mughal era when these two dishes came?
You see, first of all, all Muslim rulers are not Mughals.
Exactly.
The Muslim rulers some of them are of Turkish descent. A whole lot of them are Afghans. There are some who are of Iranian descent, etc., etc. Now, if you were to travel begin traveling from, say, Delhi, and you were to move in the direction of the west, you will gradually start seeing, once you enter Punjab and you keep moving, you will see more and more use of tandoor. This is how the tandoor came.
Nice.
And the tandoor came with the Central Asians. I had the good fortune of traveling to Uzbekistan last year, and this is where the Mughals came from. Babur came from there, and most of their cooking is done in the tandoor. And what we eat today is an improvement on what the Uzbeks eat. I just hope no Uzbek is listening to this, because they'll get very angry. But their food is, you can visualize that this could have evolved into the biryani. There is no biryani anywhere else in the world. There is something called the biryan that they make in Afghanistan. And biryan in its shape in which it is cooked in Afghanistan was available in Bhopal till about 15-20 years ago, because an entire large family of Afghans was imported into Bhopal by the last woman ruler of Bhopal, Begum Sultan Jahan, because he wanted the youngest daughter to be married to her youngest son.
Mm.
So this is the last movement of Afghans who came and settled down in Bhopal, and they brought the biryan with them. But that biryan is cooked only in Bhopal. The biryani that we have in Delhi, and from Delhi it has spread all over, is something that has evolved here. And I'll tell you why. Because the cooking method all over Central Asia is essentially the cooking in the tandoor. And if you ate the Uzbek samosa, then you will know. Incidentally, the samosa has come to us from Uzbekistan. And jalebi has come to us from Turkey. They are not Indian. Halwa, the word is Arabic. And the preparation is also Arabic. But biryani has not come to us from Kerala. What is sold in Kerala as biryani is something that they have started calling biryani because it is very heavy in spices and so on and so forth. The biryani is essentially, you see, it has a whole lot of varieties. There is the Lucknowi variety, the Avdi variety is slightly different, Bhopal variety is different, Rampur is different, which is what I have been saying, that each cook makes his own recipe. But biryani essentially is you have meat and spices cooked together, and then in the soup that is left, then you remove the meat, and the soup that is left together, you cook rice. And then you add rice, meat in layers, and then you give it a dum. That is the essence of biryani. What ingredients you will use, what spices you will use. There was a friend of mine who was a great cook. He only used the green cardamom. Ginger, garlic, salt, green cardamom, and nothing else. And it came like a phenomenal biryani. And there are people who are making achari biryani, you know. So, but the preparation is an evolution in India. It hasn't come from anywhere else. Which is what I've been arguing, that Mughaliya food is an Indian creation. You cannot go to any other country. Go to Iran and look for Mughaliya food, you will not find it. Go to Uzbekistan, I went hunting. Yeah. They have nothing called the korma. Nothing. Yeah. Their food is raw. Yeah, sorry.
Lucy has joined us all the way from London, and she's asking a question that, so there are two questions. One she's asked is, if we only have to cook a dish from original ingredients from India, what would that dish be?
Well, that is a very tough question to ask, because what is an original Indian ingredient? Because I was just looking into the coconut, and I found that there are two kinds of coconut, essentially, when you break it down. There is one coconut that developed around Sri Lanka and Indonesia. And there is a coconut that evolved on the eastern coast of America. These two were mixed into each other by the original people who moved out of Africa and landed up in Australia. They mixed these two strains. And the coconut that you find now growing on the east coast of America is all originally from Sri Lanka, Indonesia. And this movement happened 20,000 years ago because these people were trading with Madagascar. And this has all been documented through DNA studies. DNA of the coconut. So what is original Indian? You know, because India was at one time part of Australia.
Yes.
So, so all these vegetations, etc., in their most primitive form, they would have been there when all the continents were together, when Pangea broke up. So what is original Indian is very difficult to say. What is original,
So another question is asked: what would be a typical meal? What would be a typical thali 300 years ago? You can choose any region which you would like to talk about. But 300 years ago, what would be a typical lunch or a dinner thali?
Well, I would think, you could remove all the vegetables that the world has come to know after the New World, after Europeans went and realized that there is another world there. Everything that has come from there, you have to remove. Remove all of that. Remove all the cooking oils that have come into business now. Rice certainly would be there, and wheat. So both of them would be there. Millets would be there, and there would be this the one dal that is most commonly used in making the sambar, the arhar ki dal. That would be there. Arhar has been is one of the oldest dals being cooked in India, and it was found wild in the forest in Karnataka. So it is from there that it has been domesticated. So that would be there. There would obviously be meat, and horses were domesticated 10,000 years ago, and in Mongolia, and about 1500 BC, the first domesticated horse was the earliest remains of a domesticated horse that have been found in India are about 1500 BC, which is 3,500 years ago. And the meat of the horse was a very prized meat. So was the meat of all the animals that you had domesticated. So that would be part of the food. There would certainly be no potatoes. There will be no tomatoes. There will be no large number of legumes wouldn't be there because most of them are Indian. Yeah.
Onion is Indian.
Onion, the earliest record of cultivation of onion comes to us from Egypt. So, and funnily, when it reached Arabia, it was banned. And when it reached India, it was banned. For the same reasons, because it came from outside.
Okay. There's a question which is asked about pan. Yeah.
About?
The betel nut, the saffron and cloves which goes into it. All this, how much of it is Indian and how much of it is external?
Betel nut.
Betel nut, the betel leaf, betel nut, saffron and cloves, because all that goes into making pan, and pan is so Indian. So
yeah. So we have been importing cloves for a very long time. The clove trees were planted in the Nilgiri hills by the East India Company. So that is how ancient the clove cultivation in India is.
Okay.
Pan is, it's a wine, and I would think that it is fairly old, because in the Kama Sutra, it is mentioned how the young man has to prepare for the visit of his beloved. So among the things that he has to do is to have pan. Saffron was cultivated in Kashmir, but I would think that it has come from Central Asia.
Okay.
And there is, I haven't actually looked at it, but I would expect that this would be at least about 700-800 years old, if not older.
Okay, there's a question from Sneha saying that our tandoor is actually evolved from the Harappan oven structures that you see in Harappa.
Well, I don't really know whether there is a direct connection between these two, and because we don't even know how those ovens function. And what I know for a certainty is that the time when we were growing up in Delhi and we were living in New Delhi, every area where there were Punjabis, descendants of Punjabi migrants, there were tandoors in every area where you could take your, you make your wheat atta dough at home and take it to the tandoor and get the rotis cooked. And it used to be 5 paisa per roti. The woman will take cooking charges. And you could also sit there and she used to sell these rotis and sell you dal. Every area which has a Punjabi refugee population, they were tandoor. They came with that.
Okay.
And before that, there were no tandoors on the streets in Delhi. Now they have again disappeared. You know, when I'm talking of the, I'm now 70. I'm talking of the time when I was about 20. So in the last 30, 40 years, they have disappeared. The tandoor that we use now has a continuity to Central Asia. Between the Indus Valley to now, it is rather difficult to trace a continuity because we don't know. Till today, we don't know the reason for the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization. We have not been able to establish a dialogue between the Indus Valley civilization and the Aryans. So if this is shown, and there are people who want to present the Hadappans as early Aryans, but you know, aside from those ahistorical efforts, if there is a historical connect established, then one might be able to look at a continuity. But as of now, I don't see a continuity.
Okay. There are a lot of questions which have been asked about books. Okay. To understand what was food way back then, whichever era, can you recommend a few books which people can understand older Indian cuisines better?
Well, you know, quite a lot of these are not found together in the shape of a cookbook, because cookbooks are recent. But Ain-e-Akbari has references for such and such to be cooked like this, etc., etc. What are the ingredients, etc. And you have to be very careful because that recipe is for 40 seers of rice. You are going to cook 250 grams of rice. You know, so you have to work out how those proportions would operate. There is a recipe book. I can look up and I can share those references with you.
Yeah.
Written at the time of Shah Jahan.
We can share it with people later.
Yeah. So there are some of those. There is one book called Curry. What is the name of the author? The book has come about 5-6 years ago. That has some 17th, 18th century recipes.
Okay. There is an interesting question by Abhishek, and he wrote it on Facebook also today. The question was, if so many ingredients came from
and all
outside.
that. So earlier recipes, one need to follow. I can't hear. Yes. Bhavna
Yeah,
to
I
everyone.
think
Yes,
so. We
Lizzie
lost you.
Collingham is the book that I'm telling you about.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, but in the middle, I lost what you were saying.
No, no. I said I couldn't hear you, so I asked the next question.
Yeah,
Okay. What we'll do is we'll share the list of books that you sent to all the people who attended today. So
yeah,
you can
yeah,
send
yeah,
it across to us. We'll email it to everybody.
yeah. Sure,
Um,
sure.
so the question is, Abhishek is asking this question: if everything came from outside, why did were there so many invasions coming to India? If all the ingredients are outside, why are so many people coming and invading India? And that's a question he asked today morning on Facebook also. So
Well, first of all, people were not coming here in search of vegetables. Those who were coming here, and people were coming here for a large number of reasons. I have a little problem in using the term invasion
mm,
because invasion presupposes borders.
mm,
There were no borders. People went and settled down where they did.
mm,
And that is how human population spread all over. The idea of invasion happens when you have nations. And nations happened in the 19th century. Before that, there were no nations, there were no borders. We have heard that Guru Nanak went to Mecca. Did anybody ask him for travel papers? And we know for a fact that Faiz Ahmad Faiz's father, traveled from India to Kabul, Kabul back to India, and from near Peshawar, and from there he came to Lahore and took a train to Bombay, and from Bombay got into a ship and went to England and studied there, became a bar at law, came back and practiced in Peshawar. Did not use any travel papers. There weren't any travel papers. You came to the Bombay dock and you said, I want to get onto a ship going to London. And you bought a ticket and you got in. Like you get into a bus from Pune to Bombay. So as recently as that, as Faiz's father, like, this is from his biography, there were no travel papers.
yeah,
So this idea of invasion and what we call invasion is very interesting.
mm,
Aryans coming to India is not called an invasion ever.
mm,
But Alexander becomes an invader.
mm,
So India becomes a nation when Aryans come here.
mm. Right.
And what about the poor fellows who were living here before that?
Mm,
The original inhabitants of the subcontinent who came here 60,000 years ago.
mm,
The ancestors of all the tribes that we have in India, they are the original inhabitants. All of us are outside. So
right.
that is one. The second is that there are a whole lot of things which are Indian, which I've listed some of them, which these restaurants which call themselves Indian, they don't serve. And most of us don't eat. How many of us eat brinjal? How many of us eat bitter gourd, tinda, parmal, bathua? These are our greens. So, and majority of our people, this is what they ate. The things that have taken over the market in the last 3 years because colonialists promoted them.
Mm.
And we forgot what we used to grow and cultivate. So there is a whole lot of things that were there, which have
Okay,
now, because nobody cultivates them, they have died. And in any case, those people were not coming here for that. Some of them were coming here for the fertile land of this country, which was famed and it was actually one of the most fertile flatlands. After there were the valley of the Nile and there was the valley of the Ganga in India, two of the most fertile valleys in the world. So people came for that. They came, they heard of the great wealth. So the wealth, those who came to loot, they came for that. And there were others who came here to settle down and to build their family, to build their empires.
okay.
They were not coming here in search of tindas, no, I am sure.
Okay, two link questions. One is ghee essentially Indian, the way ghee is made, or did it come from outside? And the second question, which Faiza has asked, is about the distant, illegitimate cousin of ghee, which is dalda. And how did dalda come about and being accepted in India? And what were the implications
Yeah.
of using that?
Yeah, you see, one about ghee, ages ago, I was trying to do a series on a 52 episode series we were planning on the history of India. And for that, I had asked a very senior historian to give us an outline. So there he had indicated that it was ghee was perhaps one of the things the Indus Valley people were exporting.
Oh,
And in huge earthenware jars on which there were seals, and these Indus Valley seals, and some of them have been found in old Roman and Sumerian settlements. So the Indus Valley people were trading with them. They were also exporting sesame oil.
okay.
So these were the things that were being exported. So ghee is something, you know, where you have milk, and then you take out the cream, and then you know, or you curdle it, and after that you know, put it through a churner, and you remove the butter, and then you cook the butter. So butter was being taken out in a whole lot of civilizations.
Mm.
Europe and all that, they were familiar with butter. Cream and butter was churned from there. But then to cook the butter was something that probably happened here. And I would think why that would happen is because of the hot climate.
Mm.
Because in the cold climate, you could keep butter without it going rancid.
Mm.
But butter would, it very quickly attracts fungus. It begins to reek, and after some time, it becomes, you can't eat it. So they must have found this, or maybe accidentally it must have gotten heated, and then they found that this doesn't go bad. So that is a very old thing, and you have terms in Sanskrit for it, and so on and so forth. So one would assume that this is um, relatively older.
Okay. Uh,
What were the
Again,
other question? That illegitimate
yeah, dalda.
dalda. You see, dalda is actually oil, and it is vegetable oil, and most of it would be cottonseed oil. Very few people make the connection that it is the textile mills, owners of textile mills, that were also making. It is made from the cotton seed.
Okay.
And then there was a process of where I think hydrogen gas was used to solidify it and gave it those kind of grains. That grains, they must have tried a whole lot of things to finally get that textured grain.
Mm.
Because the moment you got that, it started looking like Desi ghee.
Mm.
And that is why it became. Dalda was actually, it became virtually a synonym for vegetable
Yes.
oil,
Yes.
because there were a whole lot of other people who were making it. There was DCM used to make rath. There
Yes.
was Sunehri, Ikka Marka, number one, etc. But they were also all referred to as dalda.
Yes.
Rath wala dalda de dena. You know. So
Exactly.
Dalda stopped being a brand name; it became a generic this thing. So this there was a process of they mixed hydrogen to it, if I'm not mistaken, or there was some other gas that was added to it
Hydrogenated fat. Yeah. So,
that gave it this texture.
so we'll take the last question. Last question from public, and then I have a question at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Last question is Parina said enough of food. She's asking you, what about drinks? What kind of drinks did we have traditionally in this country at different points of time? Are there mention of drinks?
Yes, plenty. You see, I think one clear distinction one needs to make is between drinks that were made through fermentation
Mm.
and alcohol based drinks through fermentation, and the others that are made through distillation. Now, distillation is a technique, I think, that came with the Central Asians. Because in our old texts, all that you hear of are fermented drinks.
Mm.
And what we make traditionally in our, in our folk tradition, mahua is fermented, tadi is fermented,
Mm.
chang
Mm.
is rice beer. These are all fermented.
Right.
The process of distillation, or most of the wines,
Mm.
they were all fermented.
Mm.
This process of distillation is probably Central Asian.
So,
But aside from these drinks that you know that made you happy, there was a whole lot of other things. There was, and even among those that made you happy, there is bhang, which was very very popular, and especially at the time of harvest season and all that. Then there were from juices of fruits, from sugarcane juice. Then there were drinks made of roasted grains ground. So we know them as sattu. So जौ का सत्तू, गेहूं का सत्तू, बाजरे का सत्तू, etc., 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 etc. These were drinks. Then there were a large number of drinks that were made from, there is this thing called khas.
mm.
Khas is a grass which gives off a strong aroma when it gets wet. This was made into making chatais for, in the summer months and all that. You make itr also out of khas. So you made a sharbat with khas. You made a sharbat with mehndi.
Mm.
You made a sharbat with badam. Then you made sharbat with the wood apple. So there was a large number of rose based, rose water based drinks were made. So all of them were, large number of them were non-alcoholic, but there were a lot of alcohol based also. And from the time the Portuguese came, they were available. So Shah Jahan actually loved a very Jahangir loved a special Portuguese wine,
Mm.
and he loved to drink it chilled.
Mm.
So ice was organized for him, and it was brought from the Himalayas.
Yes.
Huge blocks were cut of ice, wrapped in saw wood, then wrapped in camel skin bags, and then transported to wherever he was. Ghalib loved his wine chilled, and he used to float it in a huge earthenware pot. He would float small earthenware, the sakoras in which normally kheer is served. Those flat saucers, he would pour his wine and float it. And 5, 6 of them will be floating, and gradually one will chill. He'll finish it and pour more and leave it there. So by the time of the, I think, 17th, 18th century, European liquor was also fairly easily available for those who could afford it,
Right.
certainly.
Okay, so my last question, which I asked all foodie and food experts, which according to you is the most interesting cuisine? Which regional cuisine you find the most intriguing and most interesting and has diversity of whatever? So it can be multiple, but you can just tell us what you find interesting in Indian food. Which regional food is interesting for you?
Well, actually, it is very difficult for me to choose because I love food. So, if a properly laid out course by course meal that you get in a wedding in Bengal,
Hmm.
or that you get in a proper Tamil wedding, or in Kerala. I've been to wedding feasts to all of these communities. So I don't think, if I had to choose one, I'll not be able to, because the range of flavors and how you can treat the same thing in so many different ways.
Right.
The same payas or payash, as they call it in Bengal, it is rice, sweet rice, a kind of a kheer. There must be 20, 30, maybe more methods of cooking these two things together. So the range is unlimited. And not because I was one country, I've been saying that there is nothing to match Indian food. Nothing. And
Oh,
they attempt to try to box them into this is Indian and this is not Indian is all nonsense. Because all this food is. I'll just tell you one such a simple dish that I had in Arunachal. We were staying with the Apatanis, are the local tribe of that area, and we were staying at an Apatani house. And the head of the family, he said, "I'll cook you something traditional for you." He went out and chopped a bamboo. Just below the joint, he cut 4 sections, and then he filled them up with whipped eggs and chunks of chicken.
hmm.
That's it, and some salt and some little chili powder, because they don't eat any chili, because we had come, we eat chili, so they little chili powder they sprinkle, and they put it in there. They had this kind of a for 15 minutes, because that's the way. Then took out the dao and just cut it into 2 pieces and took this cylinder out, which had the green membrane of the bamboo inside had attached itself to the egg and chicken mixture.
Interesting.
And it was delectable. It was delectable. It is so simple. And and all the flavor of the bamboo that was there. And it's ready. And it's a complete meal. And in 15 minutes, you are ready to eat it and go. You know.
Great.
So it's very difficult for me to choose to say this is the best thing, etc., etc.
Okay.
I can't make the choice.
Great. Thanks for a lovely talk. And
Thank
it's
you.
Ramadan. We wish you a very, very happy Ramzan and hope you enjoy and have a great time. We are all holed up in our houses, but that's the best time to have it with family.
Yes, yes.
We are all missing our weekend tours to Muhammad Ali Road ourselves, right? Where a lot of people in Mumbai go out. But
Yeah.
uh, one thing that is so uniquely Ramzan and what was reminded by Sneha is Roo Afza. So, if you on the parting note, if you can tell something about Roo Afza, it would be great.
Well, Rooh Afza was something that was put together by the founders of the Hamdard, and the headquarter of the Hamdard is in the Lal Kuan area. This is where near Baldi Maran, where Ghalib lived and all that. This is where the Hakims used to live traditionally. And this is one of these Hakims who founded Hamdard more than 100 years ago. And he put together a lot of fruits and all that, their essence and flowers, and he made this sharbat. And it used to be an extremely invigorating thing. It was a great, it was very sweet. So it immediately gave you energy. And in the summer months, you got something that smelled pleasant and was sweet. So it became a great thing for breaking the fast. And like this association that all over the world people have with the khajur, with the date fruit, because apparently the prophet used to break his fast with the khajur. So everybody breaks their fast with the khajur. In Delhi and then gradually in large part of India, Rooh Afza became a permanent fixture for the. Now the Rooh Afza that is available now is not a patch on what it used to be earlier. And if this is, you might be able to find an old bottle of Rooh Afza. If you can probably on your network start looking for it. If somebody has saved an old bottle, 30, 40-year-old bottle of Rooh Afza, then buy a new bottle and compare the labels. The label presently does not show a single fruit. It looks exactly like that, but there are no fruits on it. It says now only essences. Originally, you used to have the watermelon, grapes, and whole lot of other fruits that were depicted on the.
Right.
Then very cleverly they got it redesigned. So unless you are looking for the fruit, you don't realize that their fruits are gone.
Great, sir. It was such a pleasure talking to you today, and
Pleasure.
hope to have you for many more talks in future.